Rich, thanks for being here today, and we look forward to hearing more from you.
I am Rich Brown. I graduated high school with a 1.89 GPA. In fact, when I was 12, my mother asked me to read Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I ate it up. I loved it. I read every other book he had up until then. So by my freshman year in high school, I thought I had it all figured out. I was starting to learn the rules because I learned that a lot of my friends didn't know the rules because they were telling me things like, well, I'm really good at math, so I think I'm going to be an accountant when I get out of high school. Or, oh, well, it's really about what you love to do, so I love to play football and I'm good at it, so I'm going to be a professional ball player. But I knew better. I couldn't tell them that because they didn't know the rules. But I knew from Robert Kiyosaki that a business is kind of like a money printing machine. The business owner owns the machine and the employees are part of the machine. They make up the machine. And the employees, they trade their time for money. The business owner has a slightly sweeter deal because he gets to keep some of that money. And while he trades some of his time for money, he can also trade his money back for more time. Employees don't always have that privilege. So I knew at 16 years old that I didn't want to be a part of anybody else's machine. I wanted to own the machine. And that changed, pardon my language, but a bunch of assholes flew 2 planes into the World Trade Center when I was 16. So suddenly all these ideas I had about being an entrepreneur and running a business and all that kind of stuff kind of took a back seat, and I started to learn a little bit more about myself. And that's important to me. I think knowing yourself, knowing the rules, and doing something remarkable are 3 of the things that have made me kind of who I am and had the most impact on my mediocre success. So I was starting to learn a little bit more about myself because I decided when I was 16 that if somebody's going to be out there fighting for me and my family and my rights across the world, well, damn it, it's going to be me. I don't want to think that somebody's out there doing it for me when I had the opportunity to do it for myself. So at 16, I knew I wanted to be a United States Marine. And my mom, God bless her heart, tried to tell me, well, you should figure out you should go see what the Air Force has to offer, and the Navy and the Army and all this stuff. I said, yeah, whatever, Mom. Marines kick butt. I want to be a Marine. So I went and talked to the recruiter, and he said, well, you're going to have to take a placement test to see what you can do here. And I said, well, I'm not really good at tests. You can see my report card here. Not exactly doing well in school. He said, well, it's a different kind of test. It's not like that. And apparently it wasn't as good as the same type of test because I did remarkably well on the ASVAB, so much so that my recruiter said, well, you can do just about anything you want to do in the Marine Corps. I said, cool. He said, so what do you want to do? I said, I don't know, I want to kick butt. I said, well, can I fly helicopters? He said, no, you can't fly helicopters. Only officers can fly helicopters. You have to be, or only officers can fly. You have to go to college for that. I said, all right. I said, well, can I drive tanks? He said, no, you can't drive tanks, or probably not. I said, well, why not? You said I can do just about anything I want. So well, think about it. There's 200,000 dudes in the Marine Corps. How many of them do you think get to drive tanks? I said, all right, fair enough. I said, so what can I do? He said, well, why'd you join the Marine Corps? Or why do you want to join the Marine Corps? And I explained to him the same reason I gave to you guys. I don't want to think somebody's out there doing it for me and my family when I have the opportunity to do it for myself. And he said, well, if that's the case, if you're being truthful with me and that's the honest reason you want to join, well, then your place is in the infantry. And I said, you're just saying that because you got to fill quotas, Mr. Recruiter Man. I said, you're just saying that because you want me to join the infantry. And he said, well, think about it. Everybody else in the Marine Corps, you can join to be an accountant, you can join to be a cook, and you can cook all day. But in reality, you're just supporting the dudes who are out there getting the job done. And if that's the reason you want to join the Marine Corps, then be the one getting out there doing the job, getting the job done. I said, all right, you got me, and I signed the contract. And that was the beginning of an 8-year adventure. I went to 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. We went to Afghanistan for 8 months, had a wonderful time there in the sense that I got my butt kicked every day, and I lived with the most amazing people you could ever hope to meet, and I'll never have that opportunity again. I went back to Hawaii for 8 months, did another training stint for 8 months, and that was when I got a start. I had to get a second job because Marines don't make crap for money. And I started bouncing on the side, and it was kind of an awkward situation because I had been going to this bar as a customer, and I had to explain to him now that I'm 19, but I want a job. So luckily, there's no law saying that a bouncer, a nightlife security guy has to be of legal drinking age. So they hooked me up and they took care of me. I went to Iraq for 8 months, and towards the end of my deployment, January 23rd, 2007, I was supervising a Iraqi police checkpoint, and a 13-year-old boy drove his truck up to my checkpoint and detonated it. He was loaded down with explosives, and he killed himself. He threw me about 15 feet through the air and a couple of Iraqi police officers, and I had a headache. My ears were ringing. I was a little confused, but other than that, I was unscathed. These Iraqi police officers were hurt, but they were saved. And I got to go home, and I was very grateful for that. I consider myself on borrowed time. It was about time to re-enlist. And I knew, because I had been around such awesome leadership, that I wanted to do this Marine Corps thing for the rest of my life, at least 20 to 30 years. And I thought, well, you know, I've worked with some really awesome officers, and maybe it's worth it to become an officer, go through the whole college route and all that, try that again. So I said, well, while I'm figuring that out, I'll go over to the basic school where they train officers, and I'll see, you know, what it is to be an officer. When I got here, I decided that was out of the picture. I wasn't going to be an officer. They don't have the influence I thought they did. So, when I got here, I got a second job as a bouncer again for a small bar up in Stafford. And about 6 months after being here, I got diagnosed with brain damage as a result of that bomb. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to re-enlist or redeploy. So suddenly I started having ideas that I hadn't had in a long time, because I thought I was going to be a Marine the rest of my life. So I'm working the door at a bar in Stafford, and I get approached by a new bar owner who's going to be opening his doors soon. And he says, hey, you know, I really like what you do here. Maybe you'd like to come be my head of security. And up until this point, I really enjoyed being a nightlife security guy, but there were a lot of issues I had with the industry. I didn't like the way that a lot of it was being run. It was kind of the stereotypical big guys who look meaner than the people they're there to keep out of the bar. But I wasn't really getting any traction on trying to make any difference. So when he offered me to be his head of security, I said, that's awesome. I'd love to do that. And I must have been doing something remarkable, because after a few months of being open there, another bar manager approached me and said, hey, I'd like you to become my head of security. So I had a decision to make, and I said, okay, I'm not really ready to leave here, but I can do everything I do here from a distance. I can hire, train, manage, and schedule your staff from here, send people in to quality check them, make sure they're doing a good job. And you know, I can keep doing this, and I can work for you. I'll just have to start a business to do it. And hence, Accolade Security Network started. And I threw network on the end there, not to confuse myself with IT companies, because I get those phone calls all the day. But because I thought, okay, if I have 4 or 5 different clients who are all bars and clubs in the Fredericksburg area or whatever, if I kick one guy out of the club, he's just going to wander down and walk into the next one. So I got this idea to network them all together. So they all share the same ban list, or people that can't go into that venue. And they talk to each other throughout the night. They say, hey, this guy's causing trouble. We're kicking him out. Don't let him in. You know, he's coming your way or whatever. So that's how we kind of got our start. And again, I must have been doing something somewhat remarkable, because the word started getting out around the Marine Corps. And one of the guys that I had worked with, his wife works for a company up in Crystal City. And he was telling her what we'd been doing. And she said, well, we need a security company to provide security for this government research lab. Maybe they'd be interested in bidding on it. And we put a bid in, and we won it. So I've been extremely grateful, very thankful to be able to say that I started this company with 2 years left in the Marine Corps, and I was able to get out of the Marine Corps and start my own business and walk right into it and not have to be anybody else's employee. Since then, I now have 34 employees. We provide security from everything from dive bars in Fredericksburg to government research labs. Last February, we started providing private investigative services. So any realm of private investigative services, whether it be fraud or, you know, cheating spouses or child custody, that's the kind of stuff we take care of. We're also getting into private protective services, bodyguarding type stuff. And by the end of the year, we're hoping to launch a training seminar online. So now I can take my original intention of wanting to bring legitimacy and professionalism to the nightlife security industry, and hopefully take it, you know, somewhat nationally through the internet. So that's Accolade Security Network. That's what we do. I started to talk about what the 3 principles that I think have helped me the most, and that's knowing the rules, knowing yourself, and doing something remarkable. And I've given some examples throughout this, but when I talk about knowing the rules can apply to anything. Like I said, a lot of people don't realize, especially in the high school time, that, you know, what you want to do may not necessarily be what leads to what you want to, the lifestyle you want to live in that career. Some careers don't provide that lifestyle. Knowing the rules will make you a lot more successful. You have a lot happier life if you know everything that goes into having that career. An example of mine of knowing the rules, when I started this company, I went to the Stafford courthouse. I said, hey, I want to start a security company. I want to make sure I do it the right way, the legal way. I don't want to do anything, you know, that's not right. They said, okay, well, you just need a state business license. You don't even need a federal business license because you're a Stafford County company. I said, okay, cool. So I did both. I did state and federal. It was easy to do. And then about 6 to 9 months later, I got a phone call from a guy named Bert Walker, who's an investigator for the Department of Criminal Justice Services. And he said, hey, do you have a business license? I said, sure, I do. I have a state and federal business license. And he said, well, do you have a Department of Criminal Justice Services business license? And I said, what's the Department of Criminal Justice Services? So I didn't know the rules. I was committing a Class 6 felony for 9 months, providing security without a license. So luckily, he gave me a cease and desist letter. He said, hey, this is what you got to do. Go get your business license, become a compliance agent, do all this stuff, and you'll be fine. So again, knowing the rules helps. Knowing yourself. One of the people that I love listening to speak is a guy named Elon Musk. Everybody familiar with him? Elon Musk, if you don't know him, he founded PayPal, sold that to eBay, and then he used those funds to create Tesla Motors and SpaceX. SpaceX is now the first company to actually have a working prototype. They've now taken the rocket, which is the only vehicle that we have that's a one-time use vehicle, and they've found a way to make them land back on Earth so we can refill them and use them again. Very, very intelligent guy. I love listening to him. But one of the things he talks about is being a business owner is kind of like staring into the abyss and eating glass. It's kind of interesting thought process. But staring into the abyss, every day you're faced with new thoughts, new ideas, and a lot of it is, well, what if this doesn't work out? You know, I got people that rely on me to feed their family. I got, you know, all these bills to pay, and if one of these contracts doesn't work out, or if one of my employees puts their hands on the wrong person, it could all be over. And that's kind of the staring to the abyss part of running a business. Eating glass is dealing with the stuff that you don't want to deal with on a daily basis, but you have to because nobody else can. And you do a lot of that as a business owner. And doing something remarkable. And I forget who I heard speak about doing stuff remarkable, but the whole idea is, you know, during the entire TV advertising time frame, people made products for average people, and they made a lot of them, and they marketed the hell out of it to average people. Well, now that we're in the informational age, you can do it a lot differently by advertising to the fringes, like Apple and somebody else I can't think of right now, but they created amazing products for the people who were really passionate about it, the audiophiles and people like that. They created a remarkable product that people wanted to talk about. And when you get people wanting to talk about it, that's real word of mouth. You can say all day, oh, most of our business comes from word of mouth, but if you're not giving people a reason to talk about you, you're not really going to go anywhere. So do something remarkable, do something that's worth talking about, and you'll be successful.
How does it work with the bars? So do they have like a walkie-talkie or something?
In terms of communicating with the other bars, we have a website, AccoladeSN.com, and all of our employees can log into that website. Yeah. When they log in, when they go to work, they fill out what's called a pre-event checklist. They make sure that emergency exits aren't blocked, that pathways aren't blocked, that occupancy loads are listed, the fire extinguisher works, all that stuff. They do all that before their job, and they get a briefing on each location as to what makes that location a little different, or maybe rules that they have that are different. And then they get a brief on the emergency actions if something, let's say a fire starts or some other natural disaster, they get that briefing. And through that system, we have our ban list, which is comprehensive. Again, it shares it with every other bar, but if they need to add somebody to it, it automatically goes to everybody else who's currently looking at the ban list.
For your local clients, security, bars.
Bars, we had FW Sullivan's until they didn't pay their rent for 5 months and the doors got locked. We have Quaker Steak and Lube in Central Park. We have Quaker Steak and Lube in Harrisonburg. We have the Orion, who just opened last week. We have Box Seats in Spotsylvania. And if you want to keep talking about bars, but out of the area, out in Burgess, we have a place called Split Lounge. We've had people that have come and go, like Fatty J's, Otter House. One of the difficulties with my industry, there's two major things that I have to deal with nightlife security. One of them is that a lot of times people don't come to me until it's too late. They've already established a reputation, they've already lost their clientele, and things have already gone too far south. So do I tell them I can't help them, or do I help them as much as I can before they close out? So that's something I got to deal with. If they're already hurting, or if they're going to be hurting, security is usually the last people to get paid. Because you can't run a bar without food, you can't run it without alcohol, you can't run it without your wait staff. Typically, security is the first thing to get cut or not get paid in my case.
how do you train people, like with good quality people, and what are the procedures you use to train them?
One of the things that makes it very easy is we only hire people with military, law enforcement, or EMS backgrounds. I don't hire kids out of high school. I don't hire people who are just looking for a career change. I look for people who have been in difficult situations, they know how to react, and they know how to handle themselves under stress. So that's a major help before we even get started. And then the first night that we get somebody on, we immediately start teaching them all the things that make us different. We don't ever cross our arms while we're on duty. We don't ever provide an atmosphere where people are afraid to come bring us their problems or to talk to us. We don't have posts, typically, unless you're checking IDs at the door or managing some specific area of the bar. We don't have posts. We're constantly circulating throughout the bar, and not only does that allow us to have a bigger presence or seem bigger than we normally would, because you can say, okay, there's one there, there, and there, because we're constantly moving around. People usually think there's 2 or 3 more of us than there are, but it allows us to interact with people over and over and over again. So we're constantly introducing ourselves, asking people, just like a manager would come out and touch tables, we do the same thing. We just say, hey, how are you guys doing? Everything coming out all right? And that gives people a chance to talk to us and get friendly with us so that they're willing to bring their problems to us. In terms of actually dealing with situations, we use a system created by Doc Thompson called verbal judo, where you're trying to, anybody ever heard of the OODA loop? The OODA loop was created by an Air Force captain. It's called orient, observe, decide, and act. And you do that millions of times every day. You orient yourself on a problem, observe it, decide how you're going to deal with it, and then act. Well, a lot of times people get in your OODA loop. They interrupt your OODA loop because they change the subject or they create a new problem that you have to deal with. And that's something that they use when fighting in fighter jets. But we have to be cognizant of it because that happens a lot in just everyday communication. If somebody has to be removed because they're causing problems for someone or they're over-intoxicated or whatever, a lot of times that subject will get changed or whatever because they're just trying to be buddies with you now because they don't want to leave. So you have to remember why you're there in the first place over and over again and remind them of why they're there, because it's not a personal issue. It's not any of that type of stuff. They just can't be here anymore. So we use verbal judo. We use the least amount of force as possible, and that usually is enough.
In the bars, are you and your staff wearing something that says security, or are you just more like the wait staff, or just?
We have our own appearance. We look completely separate from the wait staff. We have an appearance that looks similar to what you would see maybe like an off-duty cop wear, or if you're familiar with like government contractors that go overseas and do that kind of type of work. We wear khaki pants with cargo pockets, tucked in blue polo, says security across the back, and has our Accolade Security Network and their name tag and all that stuff. And that distinguishes us enough from everybody else. It's a somewhat official looking, but I don't look like a rent-a-cop.
How would you go about preventing something like that from happening, where you throw somebody out, but then they're waiting for your personnel in the parking lot?
Okay. We actually provided security for cue balls for about a month, and then they couldn't afford us anymore, so they went back to the staff they had before. And one of those people was the man who was shot. Without saying anything negative about the person or the group or anything like that, we would have handled the situation slightly differently, because what happened is there was a fight inside the establishment. One of the people was forced to leave. He walked to his car alone with a group of other people, and then they drove away, and as they were driving away, they shot at the bar and shot the bouncer, and he died. We always follow the people to their car. We make sure that they're getting to their vehicle safely and that they're leaving. There's no issues. They're not camping out in the parking lot waiting for somebody to come out or anything like that. And remarkably, the same night that happened, we had a situation out in Burgess where someone grabbed a handgun out of their glove box. And thankfully, my guys were doing due diligence, because as soon as the gun came out of the glove box, they drew on the individual and they talked him down, and he got out and he left. So no shots were fired where we were. You can't say every situation is going to turn out like that. You can't control the unknown, and unfortunately, you will never know what you don't know.
You mentioned they drew on the individual. Do your guys carry?
Yes, we have some that are armed. We have some that are unarmed. It just depends on the venue and their atmosphere and what's going on there.
How do you do your marketing for your business?
We've done, a lot of it's happened through word of mouth because bar staff tend to kind of hop from job to job and they spread the word for us. We've done cold calling. We've sent out flyers and said, hey, we're in the area and we're interested in working with you. And some of the bar managers and owners have spread the word for us because, you know, the general manager at Fatty J's was good friends with Steve and Paul at Otter House, who said, hey, you guys should really get these guys in here. They do really good work. And we have an online presence and all that, but my industry is difficult to market for because there are so few people who are interested in my product. You know, most of you aren't going to roll out of bed in the morning and say, you know, I really want security wherever I am.
We've been doing this for 5 years, and you've been one of the best speakers we've had.
Thank you.